The scream tore from Hannah Thompson's throat as her feet pounded through the fresh snow, her lungs burning with each gasping breath, while the shouts of her cousins echoed behind her through the bare winter trees of the Oklahoma Territory. She clutched her torn shawl around her shoulders, her dark hair whipping behind her as she ran, knowing that if they caught her this time, there would be no escape from the marriage they had arranged without her consent. The frozen ground beneath her boots made every step treacherous, but fear drove her forward into the wilderness beyond Muskogee, away from everything she had ever known. It was January of 1887, and the winter had come down hard on the Oklahoma Territory, blanketing the rolling hills in white and turning the Arkansas River into a sheet of ice along its edges. Hannah had been living with her cousins since her parents died of fever 2 years prior, and at 22 years old, she had thought herself safe from being bartered away like cattle. She had been wrong. When she overheard them finalizing the deal with a cruel rancher twice her age, a man known for beating his first wife to death, Hannah knew she had only one choice. She had to run. The problem was that her cousins, Marcus and Robert Thompson, were seasoned trackers who knew these woods better than most. They had grown up hunting these lands, and Hannah could hear them gaining on her, their voices carrying through the cold air with promises of what they would do when they caught her. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stumbled over a hidden root beneath the snow, catching herself against a tree trunk before continuing her desperate flight. Blood pounded in her ears, nearly drowning out the sound of hoofbeats somewhere in the distance. She did not know if the rider was friend or foe, but she had no choice but to keep running. Her feet were going numb inside her thin boots, and her fingers had long since lost feeling despite being buried in the folds of her shawl. The temperature was dropping as the afternoon wore on, and she knew that even if she escaped her cousins, the winter itself might claim her life. Still, dying free in the snow seemed preferable to what awaited her in that rancher's house. The hoofbeats grew louder, and suddenly, a massive bay horse burst through the trees ahead of her, its rider pulling hard on the reins. Hannah skidded to a halt, her eyes wide with terror as she prepared to change direction, but the man astride the horse was already swinging down from his saddle. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy sheepskin coat and a wide-brimmed hat dusted with snow. His face was weathered and handsome, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days of stubble and eyes the color of storm clouds. "You can stop now safe," he said, his voice deep and steady as he held up one gloved hand. "Whatever you are running from, it stops here." Hannah stood frozen, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. She could still hear her cousins crashing through the underbrush behind her, getting closer with every second. "You do not understand," she gasped. "They will not stop. They need the money from selling me, and they will kill anyone who gets in their way." The cowboy's jaw tightened, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "They are trying to sell you." His voice had gone quiet, which somehow made it more menacing than if he had shouted. "To a rancher named Colt Murdoch," Hannah said, wrapping her arms around herself as a violent shiver ran through her body. "My cousins made a deal. I only found out this morning." The cowboy turned his head as the voices grew nearer, then looked back at Hannah with a decisiveness that made her breath catch. "Get on the horse," he ordered, already reaching for the rifle secured to his saddle. "But I cannot ask you to, now," he said firmly, and something in his tone made Hannah obey without further argument. She grabbed the saddle horn and pulled herself up onto the massive horse, her frozen fingers barely able to grip the leather. The cowboy positioned himself between her and the direction her cousins were approaching from, his rifle held loosely but ready. Marcus and Robert burst through the trees a moment later, both red-faced and panting, their own rifles in hand. They pulled up short when they saw the cowboy standing there, his calm presence somehow more threatening than any aggressive posture could have been. "That is our cousin," Marcus said, his voice harsh as he tried to catch his breath. "She ran off, and we are bringing her home." "This is family business, stranger, so step aside." "I do not think so," the cowboy replied evenly. "The lady says you are trying to sell her against her will. That stops being family business and starts being a crime." Robert spat into the snow. "Who the hell are you to interfere? She is our responsibility, and we will do with her as we see fit. Her parents left her in our care, and we need compensation for feeding and housing her these past 2 years. "My name is Jack Turner," the cowboy said, and Hannah saw both her cousins go pale. "I am a federal marshal, and I am telling you right now that human trafficking is a federal offense. You boys want to test me on that?" Hannah felt her heart leap at his words. Jack Turner. She had heard the name whispered in Muskogee. Tales of the marshal who had cleaned up 3 territories and never backed down from a fight. Her cousins clearly knew the name too, because Marcus lowered his rifle slightly, though his face was twisted with rage. "She owes us," Marcus insisted. "We took her in when she had nothing. We clothed her and fed her. And I worked your farm from dawn to dusk every day," Hannah called out from atop the horse, her voice shaking but determined. "I cooked and cleaned and tended your animals. I earned my keep 10 times over, and you know it." Jack did not take his eyes off the 2 men. "Here is what is going to happen. You 2 are going to turn around and head back to town. Miss Thompson here is going to come with me, and if I hear of you bothering her again, I will come looking for you with a warrant. We clear?" "Murdoch already paid us half," Robert said desperately. "He will come looking for his money or the girl." "Then I suggest you return his money," Jack said coldly. "Because if Colt Murdoch wants to take this up with me, I will be happy to have that conversation. Now move." The finality in his voice left no room for argument. Marcus and Robert exchanged glances, then slowly backed away into the trees, their faces dark with fury but their weapons lowered. Hannah watched them disappear into the forest, hardly daring to believe she was free. Jack waited several long minutes, listening to the sound of their retreat, before he finally relaxed and lowered his rifle. He turned to look up at Hannah, and his expression softened when he saw how badly she was shivering. "You are half frozen," he said, concern replacing the steel in his voice. "My cabin is about 3 miles west. Can you hold on that long?" "I think so," Hannah managed through chattering teeth. "Thank you. I do not know what would have happened if you had not. Do not think about it," Jack said firmly as he swung up into the saddle behind her. He settled into place and wrapped one arm around her waist to steady her, then pulled a thick blanket from his saddlebag and draped it over her shoulders. "Hold on to me. I am going to get you somewhere warm." Hannah leaned back against his broad chest as he urged the horse forward, and despite everything that had happened, she felt safer than she had in 2 years. Jack's body blocked the wind, and his arm around her waist was strong and protective. She could feel the steady beat of his heart against her back, and gradually her shivering began to ease. They rode in silence through the snow-covered landscape, the only sounds the crunch of hooves and the occasional call of a winter bird. Hannah's mind raced with everything that had happened, but exhaustion was beginning to set in now that the immediate danger had passed. She found herself growing drowsy despite the cold, lulled by the rhythmic movement of the horse and the solid warmth of the man behind her. "Stay awake," Jack said quietly near her ear. "I know you are tired, but you need to stay conscious until we get you properly warm. Talk to me. Tell me about yourself." Hannah forced her eyes open. "There is not much to tell. My parents had a small farm near Muskogee. They were good people." When the fever took them, my cousins were my only living relatives. I thought they would be like family." Her voice broke slightly. "I was foolish." "You were hopeful," Jack corrected gently. "That is not the same as foolish. What were you planning to do if you escaped?" "I had not thought that far ahead," Hannah admitted. "I just knew I could not marry that man. I heard stories about what he did to his first wife. I would rather freeze in the snow than suffer that fate." Jack's arm tightened slightly around her waist. "You will not freeze, and you will not be forced into anything you do not want. I give you my word on that." Something in his voice made Hannah's throat tight with emotion. This stranger, this marshal, had risked himself for her without hesitation. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. There was a long pause before Jack answered. 8 years ago, my younger sister ran away from a situation similar to yours. I was away on assignment, and by the time I found out and went looking for her, she had already died of exposure trying to cross the mountains in winter. She was 19. His voice was rough with old grief. "When I saw you running through those trees today, terrified and desperate, I saw her. I could not save Sarah, but I could save you." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. "I am so sorry." "So am I," Jack said quietly, "but maybe some good can come from it. Maybe she led me to that spot at exactly the right time to find you." They fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now, weighted with shared understanding and the beginning of a connection neither of them had expected. The sun was beginning to set, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold, when Jack finally guided the horse through a break in the trees, and Hannah saw a sturdy log cabin nestled in a small clearing. Smoke rose from the chimney, and warm light glowed in the windows. "Someone is here," Hannah asked, confused. "My deputy, Sam," Jack explained as he dismounted and reached up to help her down. "He has been watching the place while I was out on patrol. You will like him. He is a good man." Hannah's legs nearly gave out when her feet touched the ground, and Jack caught her easily, supporting her weight as he guided her toward the cabin door. It swung open before they reached it, and a young man with sandy hair and a friendly face appeared in the doorway. "Jack." "I was starting to worry. You were supposed to be back 2 hours ago." Sam's eyes widened when he saw Hannah. "Who is this?" "This is Miss Hannah Thompson," Jack said, helping her inside where the heat from the fireplace immediately began to work on her frozen skin. "She needs to warm up and probably eat. Can you heat some of that stew?" "Of course," Sam said, already moving toward the pot hanging over the fire. "Miss Thompson, please sit by the fire." Hannah sank into the chair Jack guided her to, her entire body beginning to shake harder now that she was in the warmth. Jack knelt in front of her and carefully pulled off her soaked boots, then wrapped her feet in a dry blanket. His hands were gentle but efficient, and Hannah found herself watching his face as he worked. There were lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. His focus was entirely on making sure she was all right, and something in her chest tightened at his care. "Jack," Sam said from across the room, his voice low. "What happened out there?" Jack quickly explained the situation while he worked on getting Hannah's wet shawl off and replacing it with a thick, dry blanket. Sam's expression grew darker with every word. "Colt Murdoch," Sam said, shaking his head. "That man is poison. I heard his first wife did not die of an accident like he claimed." "Neither did I," Jack said grimly. "But there was never enough evidence to prove otherwise. That is why I could not let him be handed over to him." "You did the right thing," Sam said firmly. "Miss Thompson, you are safe here. Jack Turner is the most honorable man I have ever met, and I am not half bad myself. You have our protection for as long as you need it." Hannah looked between the two men, overwhelmed by their kindness. "I do not know how to thank you, both of you." "You do not need to thank us," Jack said, sitting back on his heels. Are you starting to feel your fingers and toes again? Hannah flexed her hands experimentally. Yes, it hurts. That is good, Jack said with a slight smile. Pain means the blood is flowing again. You will be all right. Sam, can you bring that stew over? The next hour passed in a blur of hot food and gradually returning warmth. Jack and Sam were respectful and kind, never pressing Hannah for more information than she was ready to give. As she ate the hearty venison stew and sipped hot coffee, she found herself relaxing in a way she had not been able to in years. These men meant her no harm. They truly just wanted to help. I should ride back to town, Sam said eventually, rising from his chair. If Marcus and Robert are making noise, I should be there to keep an ear out. Plus, I can start asking around about Murdoch's whereabouts. If he is coming for his money, we should know about it. Good thinking, Jack agreed. Be careful, though. Those Thompson cousins looked angry enough to do something stupid. I will watch my back, Sam promised. He touched his hat brim and nodded to Hannah. Miss Thompson, it was an honor to meet you. You are in good hands with Jack. After Sam left, the cabin fell into a comfortable quiet. Jack added more wood to the fire, then settled into the chair across from Hannah. In the firelight, she could see him more clearly now. He was probably in his early 30s, with dark brown hair that touched his collar and those remarkable gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. There was a strength to him that went beyond the physical, a quiet confidence that made her feel protected. You should rest, Jack said after a while. You can take the bed. I will sleep out here by the fire. I cannot take your bed, Hannah protested. You have already done so much. I insist, Jack said with a firmness that brooked no argument. You have been through a trauma today. You need proper rest. Hannah wanted to argue further, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a heavy weight. Just for tonight, she finally agreed. Tomorrow we can figure out a better arrangement. Jack showed her to the small bedroom, which was simple but clean. There was a large bed covered in quilts, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a dresser with a mirror. It was more comfort than Hannah had known in years, and she felt tears threatening again. There are clean clothes in the dresser, Jack said. They will be too big, but they will be warmer than what you are wearing. I will be right outside if you need anything. Jack, Hannah said as he turned to leave. He paused and looked back at her. Thank you for everything. You saved my life today. His expression softened. Get some rest, Hannah. We can talk more tomorrow. After he left, Hannah changed into a flannel shirt that hung to her knees and crawled under the quilts. The bed was soft and warm, and despite everything, she felt safe. She could hear Jack moving around in the main room, the familiar sounds of someone settling in for the night. As she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was that she had been right to run. Whatever came next, it had to be better than what she had left behind. She woke to the smell of coffee and bacon frying. Pale morning light filtered through the window, and for a moment, Hannah could not remember where she was. Then the previous day came rushing back, and she sat up quickly, her heart racing. But the sounds from the other room were peaceful, domestic, and gradually her breathing slowed. She found her clothes from yesterday had been hung near the fire to dry, and though they were wrinkled, they were warm and clean. She dressed quickly and ran her fingers through her tangled hair, wishing she had a brush. When she emerged from the bedroom, Jack was standing at the stove, his back to her. He had changed into a clean shirt and had shaved, and Hannah found herself noticing things she had been too frightened to pay attention to yesterday. The breadth of his shoulders, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the easy confidence in his movements. Good morning, she said softly, and Jack turned with a smile that transformed his serious face. Good morning. I hope you slept well. Better than I have in a long time, Hannah admitted. Is there anything I can do to help? You can sit and keep me company, Jack said, gesturing to the table. Breakfast is almost ready. They sat together as the morning sun climbed higher, eating bacon and eggs and thick slices of bread with butter. Jack told her about his work as a marshal, the territories he covered, and the cabin he had built with his own hands 3 years ago. Hannah talked about her parents, her childhood on the farm, and the dreams she had once had of maybe teaching school someday. You could still do that, Jack said. There is always need for teachers, especially out here. I have no money, no references, nowhere to live, Hannah said, reality crashing back down on her. I cannot stay here indefinitely, but I have nothing to my name except the clothes I ran away in. Jack was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes thoughtful. I have a proposition for you, he finally said. I travel a lot for work, sometimes for weeks at a time. I have been needing someone to watch the place when I am gone, tend the garden in season, keep the cabin maintained. It would not be charity. It would be honest work for honest pay plus room and board. You could save up money, decide what you want to do next. Hope flared in Hannah's chest, but she tried to temper it with practicality. You barely know me. How do you know I would not rob you blind the moment you leave? Jack's lips quirked in a half-smile. I am a pretty good judge of character. It comes with the job. Besides, you had nothing yesterday and you still risked freezing to death rather than compromise your principles. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. What would people say? Hannah asked quietly. About me living here with you. We will make sure everything is above board, Jack assured her. Sam can act as a sort of chaperone when I am in town. And when I have to travel, you will be here alone anyway. But if you would prefer, I can help you find a position with a family in town instead. Hannah thought about it. Going back to Muskogee meant risking running into her cousins or Colt Murdoch. It meant being under constant scrutiny and judgment. Here, in this peaceful cabin in the woods, she could breathe. She could heal. And something about Jack Turner made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her parents died. I would like to stay, she said. If you are certain about the offer. I am certain, Jack said, and the warmth in his eyes made Hannah's heart skip a beat. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable routine. Jack taught Hannah how to handle a rifle, insisting that she needed to be able to protect herself if trouble came calling while he was away. She proved to be a quick study, her hands steady and her eyes sharp. In return, she transformed the cabin into a real home, adding small touches that Jack had never thought about. Curtains for the windows, herbs drying from the rafters, bread baking in the oven that filled the space with warmth and comfort. They talked for hours by the fire in the evenings, sharing stories and learning about each other in the way people do when they have nothing but time and genuine interest. Hannah learned that Jack had grown up in Texas, that he had become a marshal because he believed in justice and protecting those who could not protect themselves. She learned that he loved books and could quote Shakespeare, that he played the harmonica when he was alone, that he missed his sister every single day. Jack learned that Hannah had a sharp wit and a kind heart, that she saw beauty in small things, that she was stronger than she gave herself credit for. He found himself watching for her smile, listening for her laugh, looking forward to coming home in a way he never had before. It was Sam who noticed first, of course. He stopped by one afternoon in late February to find Jack chopping wood with a grin on his face while Hannah hung laundry that snapped in the cold breeze. "You are falling for her," Sam said bluntly once they were alone. Jack nearly cut his own foot with the axe. "What? Do not play dumb with me," Sam said, crossing his arms. "I have known you for 5 years, and I have never seen you look at a woman the way you look at Hannah Thompson. You are in love with her." Jack set down the axe and wiped his forehead, not meeting Sam's eyes. That is ridiculous. She is under my protection. I would never take advantage. I am not saying you are taking advantage, Sam interrupted. I am saying you have feelings for her, real feelings. And unless I am completely blind, she feels the same way about you. Jack's heart stuttered in his chest. You think so? I know so, Sam said with exasperation. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Nothing, Jack said firmly, picking up the axe again. She has been through enough. She needs stability and safety, not some marshal who is gone half the time and could get himself killed any day. She deserves better than that. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard you say, Sam replied. And I once heard you argue that you could outrun a train. She deserves to make her own choices, Jack. She deserves to know how you feel. And you deserve to be happy instead of playing the martyr. Before Jack could respond, Hannah called out that lunch was ready and the conversation was dropped. But Sam's words stayed with Jack, needling at him over the following days. He found himself paying more attention to the little things. The way Hannah's face lit up when he came home. The way she always made sure his coffee was exactly how he liked it. The way she leaned against him when they sat by the fire, as if being close to him was the most natural thing in the world. It was becoming harder to ignore what was growing between them, but Jack still hesitated. Hannah had been in his care for less than 2 months. It seemed too soon, too complicated. What if she only thought she had feelings for him because he had saved her? What if she felt obligated? The decision was taken out of his hands on a cold March morning when Sam arrived at the cabin with his horse lathered and his face grim. Murdoch is coming, Sam said without preamble. He just rode into Muskogee with 5 men. He is asking around about Hannah and he is making threats. Marcus and Robert pointed him in this direction. Jack felt ice flood his veins. When? He left town an hour ago. You have maybe an hour, 2 at most. Hannah had gone pale, her hand pressed to her throat. He will kill you to get to me. He can try, Jack said grimly, already moving to secure the cabin. Sam, help me bar the windows. Hannah, get the rifles loaded and ready. If it comes to a fight, we are going to be prepared. There are 6 of them and 3 of us, Hannah said, her voice shaking but determined. Those are not good odds. I have faced worse, Jack said, though his jaw was tight. But you are not staying here. Sam is going to take you to his place in town. You will be safer there. No, Hannah said flatly. I am not running again, and I am not leaving you to face this alone. Hannah, no, she repeated, her eyes flashing with determination. I can shoot. You taught me yourself. 3 guns are better than 2, and this is my fight as much as yours. I am staying. Jack wanted to argue, wanted to throw her over his shoulder and force her onto Sam's horse, but he could see the steel in her spine. She meant every word. And deep down, he knew they would need every advantage they could get. Fine, he said tersely. But you stay inside and you do not take risks. Promise me. I promise, Hannah said, and then she did something that surprised all of them. She crossed the room and kissed Jack's cheek, quick and soft. Be careful. Jack stood frozen for a moment, his hand coming up to touch where her lips had been. Then he shook himself and turned back to the preparations. They moved quickly and efficiently, turning the cabin into a fortress. The windows were barred with heavy shutters. Extra ammunition was distributed, and water was brought in case of fire. By the time they heard hoofbeats approaching, they were as ready as they could be. Jack positioned himself at the main window with a view of the clearing. Sam took the east window, and Hannah, despite Jack's protests, insisted on covering the west. They watched as 6 riders emerged from the trees, led by a big man with a cruel face and expensive clothes. Colt Murdoch. Turner, Murdoch called out, reining in his horse. I know you are in there. Send out the girl, and we can all walk away from this without bloodshed. Jack opened the door a crack, his rifle ready. Hannah Thompson is under federal protection. You have no claim on her, and if you try to take her, you will be breaking federal law." Murdoch laughed, a harsh sound that carried across the clearing. "Federal protection. She is stolen property paid for in good faith. I have a contract with her cousins." "A contract to buy a human being is not worth the paper it is written on," Jack called back. "Leave now and I will not bring you up on charges. Stay and things are going to get ugly." "I have 5 men with me," Murdoch said, his voice hardening. "You are outnumbered. This is your last chance, Marshal." "And this is yours," Jack replied. "Ride away." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Murdoch made a sharp gesture, and his men began to spread out, clearly intending to surround the cabin. Jack swore under his breath and pulled back inside, slamming the door and barring it. "Here we go," Sam muttered, sighting down his rifle. The first shot came from Murdoch's side, shattering against the log walls harmlessly. Jack returned fire, deliberately aiming high as a warning. But when one of Murdoch's men shot at the window where Hannah was positioned, nearly hitting her, Jack's warning shots were over. The fight that followed was loud and chaotic. Jack and Sam were both excellent shots, and they kept Murdoch's men pinned down, unable to advance on the cabin. Hannah proved she had learned her lessons well, firing carefully and precisely, never wasting ammunition. But they were still outnumbered, and it was only a matter of time before Murdoch tried something desperate. It came in the form of a torch. One of Murdoch's men made a run toward the cabin, clearly intending to set it on fire. Sam shot him before he got within 20 feet, and the man went down hard, the torch falling into the snow where it sizzled and died. "You just murdered my man," Murdoch roared. "He was trying to burn us alive," Jack shouted back. "This is your last warning, Murdoch. Federal agents have been sent for. You are already looking at attempted murder charges. Do not make this worse." It was a bluff, but a good one. Jack saw the uncertainty ripple through Murdoch's remaining men. They had signed on for intimidation, not a war with a federal marshal. One by one, they began to back away, lowering their weapons. "You cowards!" Murdoch screamed at them. "She is mine. I paid for her." "She is not property," one of the men called back. "And I am not dying over your obsession. I am out." The other 3 men quickly agreed, and despite Murdoch's fury, they mounted their horses and rode off, leaving him alone in the clearing. The rancher sat on his horse for a long moment, his face purple with rage, his hand on his gun. Jack kept his rifle trained on him, barely breathing. "This is not over," Murdoch finally spat. "You have not heard the last of me, Turner." "Yes, I have," Jack said calmly. "Because if I see your face again, I will arrest you on sight, and if you send anyone after Hannah, I will make it my personal mission to destroy everything you have built. Now get off my property before I decide to bring you in right now." Murdoch glared at him with pure hatred, but he was smart enough to know when he was beaten. He wheeled his horse around and rode off, leaving only the wounded man behind. The moment he was out of sight, Jack rushed outside, Sam and Hannah right behind him. The man Sam had shot was alive but bleeding badly from a shoulder wound. While Sam tended to him, Jack checked the tree line, making sure Murdoch was truly gone and not planning an ambush. "Is it really over?" Hannah asked, her voice small. Jack turned to her and saw that she was shaking, the adrenaline wearing off. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "It is over," he promised. "You are safe now." Hannah wrapped her arms around his waist and held on, and they stood there in the snow until Sam cleared his throat meaningfully. "I am going to take this fellow into town and get him patched up properly," Sam said with a knowing grin. "Then I will file a report about what happened here. Between his testimony and ours, Murdoch will not dare show his face around here again. But Jack, you might want to stay close to home for a few days just in case." "I will," Jack agreed, reluctantly releasing Hannah. "Thank you, Sam, for everything." "That is what partners do," Sam said simply. He helped the wounded man onto his horse and rode off, leaving Jack and Hannah alone in the clearing. They stood there for a moment, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how they were still touching. Jack reached up and gently brushed a strand of hair from Hannah's face, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "You were very brave today," he said softly. "I was terrified," Hannah admitted. "But I meant what I said. I was not leaving you to face that alone." "Hannah," Jack began, then stopped, struggling to find the words. "These past 2 months, having you here, it has been the happiest I have been in years. You have turned this place into a home, and I do not just mean the curtains and the cooking. I mean the way it feels when I walk through that door and see you. The way we talk by the fire. The way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I know this is complicated, and I know I have no right to ask, but I love you," Hannah interrupted, her eyes shining with tears. "I think I started falling in love with you the moment you said I was safe. And every day since, I have fallen a little more. I know it might seem like gratitude or confusion, but it is not. I know my own heart, Jack Turner, and it belongs to you if you want it." Jack felt something tight in his chest loosen, something he had not realized he was holding on to. "I want it," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I want you, Hannah. I love you. I think I have loved you since the moment I saw you running through those trees, so fierce and determined. I tried to tell myself it was too soon, that you needed time, but Sam was right. You deserve to know how I feel. You deserve to make your own choices." "Then I choose you," Hannah said simply. "I choose this life we are building together. I choose love." Jack cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, slow and sweet and full of promise. Hannah kissed him back, her arms winding around his neck, and in that moment everything else fell away. The fear, the danger, the uncertainty, all of it faded in the face of what they had found together. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and smiling, Jack rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is fast, but I am certain. I want to build a life with you, Hannah. I want to come home to you every day. I want to grow old with you. Say yes." "Yes," Hannah laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married 3 weeks later in Muskogee, with Sam standing as Jack's best man and the marshal's wife as Hannah's matron of honor. It was a simple ceremony, but it was filled with love and hope and the promise of a new beginning. Hannah wore a dress borrowed from Sam's wife, pale blue with white lace, and Jack could not take his eyes off her. When he slipped the simple gold band on her finger, his hand was steady, his voice sure. Marcus and Robert were not at the wedding, having been quietly encouraged by Sam to leave the territory after federal charges were filed against them for attempted human trafficking. Colt Murdoch had also disappeared, his ranch sold to pay his debts after several of his crimes came to light in the investigation that followed the attack on Jack's cabin. Jack and Hannah moved into the cabin as husband and wife, and life took on a new rhythm. Jack still worked as a marshal, but he was more careful now, more aware of what he had to lose. Hannah did take work as a teacher, starting a small school in Muskogee for children who could not afford the fancy academy. She taught them reading and writing and arithmetic, and she loved every minute of it. The first year of their marriage was full of adjustments and discoveries, learning how to live together, how to fight fair, how to make up properly. They laughed more than they argued, and they built something real and lasting together. Jack learned that Hannah sang while she cooked, that she was ticklish behind her left knee, that she cried at weddings. Hannah learned that Jack talked in his sleep, that he was terrible at checkers but excellent at chess, that he had a scar on his ribs from a knife fight he had never mentioned. On their first anniversary, Hannah told Jack she was expecting a baby. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy, then immediately set her down gently as if she were made of glass. She laughed at his sudden care, assuring him she was not fragile, but she loved him for it anyway. Their son was born in the spring of 1889, a healthy boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Samuel Jacob Turner, after the deputy who had become such a good friend and Jack's late father. Little Samuel was the light of their lives, and Jack proved to be a devoted father, taking his son everywhere once he was old enough, teaching him about the land and the animals and how to be a good man. 2 years later, a daughter joined the family, Emma Rose, with blonde hair that neither parent could account for until they remembered Jack's mother had been fair. Emma was sweet and serious, always watching everything with big blue eyes, and she wrapped her father around her tiny finger from day one. As the children grew, so did Jack and Hannah's love. They had their hard times, of course. There were years when money was tight, when the crops failed, when sickness swept through, and they feared for their children's lives. There were times when Jack's work took him away for weeks, and Hannah had to manage everything alone. But they always came back to each other, always remembered what they had survived to be together. Sam remained a close friend, eventually marrying and starting his own family. He and Jack worked together for years, cleaning up the territory and making it safer for families like their own. The two families spent holidays together, their children growing up as close as cousins. Jack eventually retired from being a marshal when he was 45, deciding he wanted to spend more time with his family while his children were still young enough to want him around. He and Hannah expanded the farm, adding cattle and horses, and their land prospered. Samuel grew into a thoughtful young man who wanted to study law. Emma discovered a love of medicine and talked about becoming a doctor, a dream her parents supported wholeheartedly. On their 20th anniversary, Jack and Hannah sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset paint the Oklahoma sky in shades of orange and gold. Their hair was threaded with gray now, and there were lines on their faces that spoke of 20 years of laughter and love and life. "Do you ever regret it?" Hannah asked, leaning against her husband's shoulder. Taking in a desperate woman running through the snow, Jack wrapped his arm around her and kissed the top of her head. "Not for a single second. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Hannah Turner. You and our children, this life we built, it is more than I ever dreamed of having." "I was so scared that day," Hannah remembered. "I thought I was running toward death. I never imagined I was running toward you, toward all of this." "You were the bravest person I ever met," Jack said softly. "You ran toward freedom even when you did not know what was waiting. You fought for the life you wanted, and you loved me when I was too stubborn to admit I loved you back." Hannah laughed and turned to kiss him, the same spark that had been there since the beginning still bright between them. "I would do it all again," she said. "Every cold step through that snow, every moment of fear if it meant ending up here with you." "You can stop now, safe," Jack said, echoing the words he had spoken to her so long ago. "You have been safe with me since the moment I found you, and you will be safe with me until my last breath. I promise you that." "I know," Hannah whispered. "I have always known." As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Jack and Hannah sat together, hands intertwined, hearts full. They had built something beautiful from that desperate winter day, something that would last beyond their own lives. Their children would carry their story forward, would tell their grandchildren about the woman who ran through the snow and the cowboy who caught her, who told her she was safe, and then spent the rest of his life proving it. Inside the house, They could hear Samuel and Emma laughing about something, their voices young and full of joy. The sound made Hannah smile, made her heart swell with gratitude for this life, for this man beside her, for everything that had come from one brave choice on a cold winter day. "I love you, Jack Turner," she said, "not for the first time and certainly not for the last." "I love you, Hannah Turner," he replied, as he had so many times before and would so many times again. "Always and forever." And in that moment, with the stars coming out above them and their family safe inside, it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Years continued to pass in their peaceful corner of Oklahoma Territory, which became the state of Oklahoma in 1907. Jack and Hannah watched their children grow into remarkable adults. Samuel did indeed become a lawyer, fighting for justice just as his father had, but with books and arguments instead of guns. He married a kind schoolteacher, and gave Jack and Hannah 3 grandchildren who visited the farm every summer. Emma shocked everyone by not only becoming a doctor, but one of the first female physicians in the state. She opened a practice in Muskogee and served everyone regardless of their ability to pay, embodying the compassion and strength she had learned from her parents. She married late, at 30, to a fellow doctor who respected her ambition, and they had twin daughters who were as fierce and independent as their mother. Jack and Hannah grew old together on their farm, surrounded by children and grandchildren, watching the world change around them. They saw automobiles replace horses, saw electricity come to the towns, saw the frontier they had known transform into something new. But through it all, their love remained constant, the foundation everything else was built on. On a warm spring evening in 1928, when Jack was 73 and Hannah was 63, they sat together on their porch as they had done countless times before. Jack's health had been failing lately, his heart growing weaker, but he insisted on these evening vigils, watching the sunset with the woman he loved. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" Jack asked, his voice softer now but still steady. "You had been here about a week, and you told me you felt more at home in that week than you had in 2 years with your cousins." Hannah squeezed his hand gently, her own fingers gnarled with age but still strong. "I remember. I was terrified you would realize what a burden I was and send me away. I could not imagine anything worse than losing the safety I had found with you." "I was already in love with you by then," Jack admitted. "I just did not have the courage to admit it yet, not even to myself." "We were both scared," Hannah said with a soft smile. "Scared of wanting something so badly after loss, but we were brave together, were we not? We built something beautiful." "The most beautiful thing I have ever been part of," Jack agreed. He was quiet for a moment, just breathing, just being with her. "Hannah, I need you to know something. When my time comes, and it will be soon, I need you to know that every single day with you was a gift. You saved me just as much as I saved you that day in the snow. You gave me a reason to come home, a reason to be better, a reason to believe in happy endings." Tears streamed down Hannah's face, but she did not look away from him. "You cannot leave me yet. We still have so much more time together." "We have had 41 years, Jack said gently, reaching up to wipe her tears with his thumb. 41 years more than I ever thought I would get. 41 years of waking up next to you, of watching you with our children, of building this life together. I am grateful for every second, Hannah. Every single second." "I am not ready," Hannah whispered. "I know," Jack said, pulling her close despite the pain in his chest. "But you are the strongest person I know. You will keep going for Samuel and Emma, for the grandchildren. You will keep teaching them about love and courage and choosing the life you want. And someday, when it is your time, I will be waiting. I promise you that." Hannah buried her face in his shoulder and cried. and Jack held her as the sun set one more time over their land, painting everything in gold and red and orange. He held her until the stars came out, until the pain in his chest grew too great and he had to go inside to rest. Jack Turner passed away 3 days later, surrounded by his wife and children, his hand clasped in Hannah's. His last words were, "I love you," and Hannah held those words close to her heart like a treasure. The grief was enormous, a physical thing that weighed Hannah down, but she did as Jack had known she would. She kept going. She threw herself into her grandchildren, into teaching them everything Jack had taught her about strength and honor and love. She told them stories about their grandfather, about the day he saved her in the snow, about the life they had built together. Hannah lived another 12 years, watching her grandchildren grow, meeting her great-grandchildren. She remained sharp and active almost to the end, still tending her garden, still teaching Sunday school at the church, still offering wisdom to anyone who asked. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1940, at the age of 75, her family gathered to mourn and to celebrate a life fully lived. Samuel and Emma spoke at her funeral, telling stories that made everyone laugh and cry, painting a picture of a woman who had been brave enough to run toward freedom and wise enough to recognize love when she found it. They buried Hannah next to Jack on a hillside overlooking their farm, under an oak tree they had planted together their first spring as husband and wife. The headstones were simple, just their names and dates and a single line that Samuel had chosen. They were safe together, and they were loved. In the years that followed, the farm passed to Samuel's eldest son, who raised his own family there. The cabin Jack built was eventually replaced with a larger house, but they kept one room exactly as it had been, a small museum to Jack and Hannah's story. Generations of Turner children grew up hearing about their ancestors, about the woman who ran through the snow and the cowboy who caught her, who told her she was safe, and then proved it every day for the rest of his life. The story became family legend, told and retold at reunions and holidays, embellished slightly with each telling but always keeping the heart of the truth. It was a story about courage and love, about choosing your own path and fighting for the life you wanted. It was a story about two people who found each other in the worst circumstances and built something beautiful together. And on winter evenings, when the snow fell soft over Oklahoma and the wind whistled through the bare trees, some claimed you could see two figures walking together on the hillside, hand in hand, still choosing each other, still safe together, still in love. Whether it was true or just a romantic fancy, it did not really matter. What mattered was the legacy they left behind, the proof that love could bloom even in the coldest winter, and that sometimes running toward the unknown was exactly the right choice. Jack and Hannah's story lived on, passed down through generations, a reminder that the bravest thing you can do is keep running toward freedom, and the luckiest thing is finding someone who will run with you, who will catch you when you fall, who will look at you and say, "You can stop now safe," and mean it with every fiber of their being. Their love story was not perfect. They had struggles and sorrows, hard times and heartbreak. But it was real and it was theirs, and it endured long after they were gone, living in the hearts of their children and grandchildren and everyone who heard the tale. Because in the end, that is what love does. It endures. It transforms. It saves us. And if we are very lucky, it finds us running through the snow on a desperate winter day and gives us a reason to stop, to stay, to build something lasting in the place we finally feel safe. Hannah Thompson had run from cruelty and found compassion. She had fled from bondage and found freedom. She had escaped from fear and found love. And Jack Turner, the cowboy marshal with the sad eyes and the good heart, had found in her the missing piece of his own soul, the reason he had survived his sister's death, the purpose behind all his wandering. They had been two broken pieces that fit together perfectly, creating something whole and beautiful and enduring. Their story was written in the land they loved, in the children they raised, in the life they built with their own hands and hearts. And so the story ends where all the best stories end, with love triumphant, with family gathered close, with a legacy that echoes through time. Hannah ran, Jack caught her, and together they built forever. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.